Hello, everybody, and welcome to Forever Red Devils Tuesday morning, and still absolutely buzzing with the result from the weekend. That derby win, it has to be a catalyst. It really, really has to be a catalyst for United to start going on a bit of a run. And it's a big week ahead because you look at this December, there were the two big games. One of them was the City Derby. The other one is this quarterfinal on Thursday against Spurs in the Carabao Cup. We get to that semi-final, and the confidence you'll have after beating a City, for example, will be that why not? Why can't we go and pull out a shock result against an Arsenal or Liverpool and the likes, or Newcastle, who we actually play in about 2 weeks' time? And things start to ramp up, really. We've got 4 games left in the year in the last 14 days. So, yeah, it's gonna be a busy schedule. It's not too bad. It goes Thursday, Sunday, Thursday, Monday. So it's 3 days turnaround most of the time, which is or 2 days. Not great, but it's workable, really. And we have been rotating our squad quite a lot, so hopefully these players will be fresh. And then, tell you what, incredible start to the year. Liverpool followed by Arsenal in the FA Cup. So things don't get any easier. So we don't really have the time to continue sort of trying to find our way, for example. Sunday needs to be a bit of a turning point in terms of understanding how our system works, how we're going to keep progressing, and how we do keep finding results and getting our way back up that table, because we didn't really make a move. I think we went from a whopping 13th to 13th over the weekend. But the main thing is we're sort of staying in and touching distance of the likes of a City's currently sitting in 5th place, 27 points, Nottingham Forest 28 points, still 6 points behind. But you feel that you could probably start to catch that up a little bit. And having gone and won, for the first time in the last 3 games was a big moment for us, because the only sort of other teams with that kind of poor form are the likes of Spurs, for example, and then you're looking at your relegation candidates. So that's kind of how, if we were to have lost 3 in a row, the only other team to have lost 3 in a row recently is Wolves, who are currently on a 4-game losing streak. So massive result, not massive in terms of moving up the table, but keeping ourselves in touch with just being able to move up the table. Now, for example, you go and win this weekend, and Newcastle loses, for example, or Brentford, Spurs drop points, even a Brighton, Fulham drop points, we can overtake and get up to sort of 7th, 8th, which is still not ideal at all, and the main thing is we're well behind Chelsea and Liverpool, so we're nowhere near sort of the title race, really. I mean, Liverpool coming on 36 points, with 14 points behind them, 12 points behind Chelsea, 8 points behind Arsenal. So, yeah, the top 4 race is very, very ambitious and almost sort of outside. Felt if you had that Forest game, probably the most frustrating game, because if you won that, we'd be sitting on 25 points, we'd be sitting tied 6th, 2 points behind City, 3 points behind 4th, and 5 points behind, 3rd. And there you're still in the mix. Now, this thing it can change. This is the main thing that I keep emphasizing the last few weeks, is that the season can change very quickly, because the league is so close, because teams are dropping points all the time. Liverpool dropped points this weekend, and Arsenal dropped points this weekend, for example. So the league is going to shift a lot, I reckon, in the next few months. I don't think what we're looking at now is going to be anywhere close to what we're going to see come the end of the season, and we just need to make sure we can kind of pick up results as we go, and just sort of stay in the chase, so that if we can go on a bit of a run and other teams buckle or whatever, or don't quite manage to get some of the same sort of results, we can sort of move up our way up the table, and then then you put pressure on teams. And for example, Nottingham Forest, if they're sitting in 4th place come sort of March, and all of a sudden there's a lot of pressure, that excitement of, hang on, we could actually be in the Champions League next season. That sort of starts to settle in, and that's where players are really, really tested. The likes of a Chelsea, Liverpool, in terms of a title race, what will that pressure do to them? That's where City generally, for example, in the past few years have been so good, is that when the pressure's been on, they haven't reacted. And they've been continuing able to get results consistently despite having all that pressure on them. So, yeah, that's kind of the situation. Coming up on the show today, though, we're going to be talking about Harry Maguire and a potential new contract. We're going to be talking about us being linked to every single blooming striker under the sun, as well as the future of Marcus Rashford and Alejandro Garnacho. Big question marks about whether they will be involved in the Spurs game on Thursday. I think that'll be a big indication. To be fair, the main thing is, the big thing with Ruben Amorim leaving Marcus Rashford and Alejandro Garnacho out of the team is it's a challenge. It's a gauntlet he's laid down. He said, right, listen, I'm not happy with what you guys are producing and training, the way you're acting, for example, your attitude or whatever. I need to see a change. I'm not closing the door. He's very much said the door is open and that they can get themselves back into the mix very quickly, but they need to prove a point. So this week we're about to see the response, aren't we? We're about to see, are these two players going to respond in the right way? And if they do, we could see them in the lineup on Thursday. And if you see them in the lineup on Thursday, then immediately, for example, you get to say, right, well, that worked. Maybe they played badly or whatever, but the main point is that they need to understand why they've been dropped, left out of the squad completely, change those small things, and go out and show Amram that they are adaptable to change. They are willing to fight for their place, and they deserve to be in the mix. They do that, they get themselves back in the side, then all of a sudden everyone starts to really align and get behind a system and a person that is Ruben Amorim. It fails to do that, however, and then obviously you suddenly start wondering, well, is that the end of both of their United careers? And it'll be really, really sad to see a Marcus Rashford leave. I don't think he's ever really lived up to the initial hype when he came through as an 18-year-old, but he's always sort of threatened to get there. And you do wonder if he'd been in better environments, for example, better teams, would he be producing the type of numbers we expect to produce? How much is what Marcus Rashford's been poor, for example, the last few years, been a sort of constant grinding down of a player who's not yet been in a side that are settled, a side that have got full confidence. And he's often had to sort of drag us through certain moments. You think of that PSG, Champions League game, and how many games he scored in against the top clubs. And that's the one thing, we're very quick to criticize Marcus Rashford because he's been really, really poor in the last sort of 12 months. But how often, when it's come down to big moments, big games, he's often produced. He's got a lot of his goals are against sort of top six clubs. He scored lots of goals in Manchester derbies, for example. He likes scoring against Chelsea's and the likes. And he's always been a go-to sort of player in the past where even when we're playing badly, he often finds moments. You think of the FA Cup tie against Liverpool earlier this year and he managed to find goals. He's a player that can all of a sudden sort of find these goals, these moments when the chips are down. So he's been a clutch player for United many, many times. And now it is the biggest crossroads of his career. Can we move him from a clutch player that kind of occasionally performs, goes on runs, to a world-class player? Or do we shift him out the door, move him along, bring in somebody else, and kind of press reset? It's a big call. Not quite sure what the right one is because it'll be guts to see Marcus Rashford leave, but we've got to find somebody who's going to produce the results. And if that's not going to be Marcus Rashford, then we've got to go to the market and we've got to go and say, right, well, who else can do that, for example? How much are they going to set us back? What is it going to cost to replace a Marcus Rashford? Are we talking about a 70, 80, 100 million pound player? Are we talking about an Amadella who's good enough? And Garnacho, if you can get him right, is he good enough to be able to replace him? And can we go and get a 40, 50 million player who then actually turns into a 70, 80 million player? Can we start doing that? Do we have the scouting network, the coaching ability, the smarts in the boardroom, negotiations to go and find a mid-tier player and turn them into a world-class player? Go and find your Mohamed Salah type of transfers, your Sadio Mane transfers, where you go and spend a reasonable amount of money on a player, but then they completely catapult to a different level. And that's something I haven't done. Dan James probably the only last sort of real transfer success story in terms of finding a player who was all right. He's in the championship, he's had a really good run, and sold him for reasonable money considering what we bought him for. We haven't really done that with anybody else recently, and we've got to start doing that. Even if you're not selling that player, just being able to get a player on the cheap and be able to turn him into a player where if you were to sell him, you'd be making 70, 80, now to 100 million. Bruno Fernandes is probably one of those stories as well, where if we were to decide to sell him, we could probably get reasonably big money for him as one of sort of the top creators in Europe in terms of the amount of chances he creates. I think in the last 5 years, he still is the leading chance creator across Europe. Now, a lot of that is to do with the fact that he stays fit for so long, for example. You look at the amount of games, but that is an additional thing. That's a big bonus, not an asterisk against that stat, for example, because you want a player that can play all the time, week in, week out, a player that stays fit very often. And he is exactly that. He is that player that can give you multiple games in a row and continue to have a really good output. And that's probably what makes Bruno Fernandes so special, is the fact that even when he's not playing well, he can play week in, week out. He can get himself into the right positions to create goals, score goals, and he can play himself back into form, because it's not a case of he plays a couple of games, then he gets injured, then he's in a weird patch. He's always fit. He's always available. And because he's always available, he's always got the chance of being in the mix and contributing to the team as well. So the big thing at the moment is what does Sir Jim Ratcliffe want out of the squad, out of the players, for example? You know, because he's been very, very cutthroat. That has been the very big sort of key change that we've seen with Ineos and Jim Ratcliffe and the Glazers, is that they are not going to stuff around. They're going to make the big decisions, and they've made big decisions in, to be fair, giving Eric Ten Hag a contract was the wrong decision, but it was a big decision, and then sacking him just 4 months after that is also a big decision. Bringing in Dan Ashworth and sacking him, they're bad decisions, but they're big decisions. So I suppose it's the only big thing, is that they're not afraid to make the big decisions. They're not afraid to admit they're wrong either. If sacking Ten Hag and sacking Ashworth were admitting that they were wrong. Now the big question is, do they have it in them to make the big decisions, like selling a Marcus Rashford? Somebody who's been like the face of United for the last 5 years. Do they have that in them? That's the big question. And if they do, well, we wait and find out if it's a right or a wrong decision. But at least they're not afraid to make those big decisions and to try and change things and make the big calls to turn the squad into something that can compete, turn the squad into a United side that we can get behind, which has not been the case in the last few years. It's far too much change, far too much regret in terms of bad signings and bad playing styles, bad moments, weak moments, individual errors. Then you've got all the issues with the leagues, for example. So an interesting story with the leagues is that United apparently have narrowed it down to 2 players, or investigating 2 players with regards to where the team leagues are currently coming from. One of them being Alejandro Garnacho, which has been quite widely covered in the last week. Suggesting that his brother, for example, is leaking it via Garnacho, or I think Garnacho himself as a player is leaking it. So that's the one big one. But the other player apparently is Amad Diallo. Apparently is being spoken to with regards to whether he potentially has been linking. A lot of people were pointing to Marcus Rashford, and you generally point to players who are kind of out of favour. Players who are struggling, and that's often where you sort of find leaks. There was big suggestions that it was Jadon Sancho last season after the fallout that he had with Ten Hag, and all of a sudden he started leaking things. The main thing is we've obviously found where it might be coming from, and the main thing is we can proactive to try and get to the bottom of this and try and start cutting out these leaks, which we have to do, because we can't be sitting there having our team being sent out every single flipping week, 2 days before the game, week in, week out. It's just not viable. As an opposition, for example, you're sitting there going, right, well, I can just wait till the day before and I can identify exactly who's playing, who's not playing, and where we can then where we can target. How can we adjust our team for that change in whatever the team news is, for example. Preparing for Joshua Zirkzee versus Rasmus Højlund, preparing for different back threes. How can we target certain players in the back three? It does give the opposition a certain amount of an advantage if you can get the team early, for example, and tweak it, or maybe even tweak your team, for example. That's also the big thing. Given the fact that football teams are only announced by an hour and 15 minutes now in the league before, you can actually change your team. So if you're getting the Manchester United league's team a day before, the night before, you can sit there and say, all right, listen, they've gone with Zirkzee, who's a big sort of taller player, maybe doesn't run as much, so we can actually make a change in our system to maybe accommodate someone who's better at maybe defending Zirkzee at a corner, for example, versus if Rasmus Højlund is leading the line, even versus if Marcus Rashford is leading the line. Someone who's got out and out pace, but doesn't have the same sort of physical presence that Erasmus Højlund has. So the leaks definitely do impede United. Now, Pep Guardiola is not someone who's going to change his team for against United. It's City are too good. They've won the Premier League too many times in the last few years, and the Champions League and the treble and the likes, to sit there and worry about what a United team are going to do. I'm not to say there wouldn't have been any analysis and that they wouldn't have paid any attention to what the United team was, but he wouldn't have changed his team based on the leaks that came out. He wouldn't have suddenly said, oh dear, okay, they've actually going with this team, therefore we need to make these changes so that we can accommodate and we can cope with United. They very much would have been, right, well, we're going to play our way, and this is how we're going to play within our system, how we're going to infiltrate the three of the back system, the five when they defend with Ugarte just further up. And but other teams, for example, your smaller teams, they might sit there and say, right, listen, this is how they're going to set up. This is how this player is going to man mark this player or zonal mark or whatever, and adjust their systems to a specific United team to try and get a result. And we can't be having that as United. We can't be sitting there knowing that our team's going to get leaked a day before and not know where it comes. And I think that's the main thing. It's not even just about the fact that it's leaked. It's the fact that there's nobody knows where it's coming from. And why would a player be leaking it? And what does that do to the dressing room? A certain amount of distrust amongst players when you look around and you sit there saying, well, one of these players is leaking our information. One of these players is not on board with what we're doing. And, are there internal accusations? Are the players looking at each other and going, listen, we know that you're the leak, or, why are you doing this? Or are you doing this? And it's just going to create so much issues within the squad in terms of trusting the players, trusting the managers, and not knowing where and what to do in these situations, because you don't know who to trust, you don't know why people are doing it. Are they trying to sabotage the team, for example? And it just creates a lot of a disagreement and an unpleasant change room. And I think that's the biggest problem. We haven't had a United change room, excuse the pun, in a while. You don't feel like we've got a change room right now that is really, really all aboard in the same sort of mission and same sort of mentality. They're all ready to sort of give their all and be aligned in the goals that we have to try and win trophies, to try and get our way back up that Premier League table and become the club of old. And it's a big thing that Ruben Amorim said that he needs to focus on, is the fact that he wants to try and change the culture of United, the culture of the team as well. So in terms of, and speaking of changing, is big news with regards to Amad Diallo. So the big thing with Amad Diallo, who's been United's best player under Ruben Amorim, his biggest moment of his career, scoring the winner in the Manchester derby. Huge moment for him, huge moment in his career. And the big news is that he's currently negotiating a new contract. He is probably one of the most important players under Ruben Amorim, and the good news is that whilst he's out of contract in 2025, they first of all we can extend it by a year. We've got a 1-year option, and at the moment we are negotiating a contract. And right now, as Amad Diallo, why wouldn't you re-sign? Yes, United aren't exactly where they want to be, but you're playing games. You're becoming a massive player. When you score moments like when you score against Manchester City in the Manchester derby, you'll sit there. I'll tell you, you put a contract in front of him. On the back of that, he probably signed out there and then. So it's good news, the fact that we are hopefully trying to time down. Hopefully we'll have news of that in the next couple of weeks and a confirmed contract extension, because he's somebody that has to stay. And one of the few at this stage success stories in terms of signing somebody who wasn't cheap. I mean, we spent a lot of money on somebody who wasn't, a particularly high-profile player. Nobody really knew who he was when we signed him from Serie A. But we signed him as a youngster. We sent him out on loan. He spent that season at Sunderland where he was so good. He signed us back in 2021, so I think he was about 19 at the time when we signed him from Atlanta. And we took a chance. And so far, now you're looking at it paying off. And considering we paid about 30 million euros, I think it was for him, or 35 million euros, whatever. I think it was a different bonus and the likes of that. We're finally sort of seeing it 3 years into the contract why we paid the money, what the sort of player we kind of saw, and the sort of player we want to try and get out of that deal. And we need more deals like that. But the good news is that we are looking to extend his contract, and hopefully he will continue to be a United player long after this season, especially given how important he is in the current system. The biggest problems a lot of people are talking about with the sort of the system at the moment is, if Ruben Amorim is successful, then it's great, and we can buy players, sell players to fit into a system that works for him. A lot of people's worries, and I very much agree with it to a certain degree, is what if we spend the next year or two, a bit like Ten Hag, building a squad of players suited to a system that not a lot of managers use. Now, yes, he talks about the fact that, yes, maybe it's a different system, but it's much the same. It's not, at the end of the day. The system at the moment doesn't have your traditional out-and-out wingers, like a Garnacho, like a Rashford, even like an Anthony, for example. So the biggest fear we have is that if we spend 2 years building a new squad, which very much fits this specific system, and Ruben Amorim is not successful and gets sacked, we are once again looking at a rebuild. But that is definitely not a reason to not do that, for example, but it is potentially a problem for United down the line. Hopefully not one we'll ever need to worry about, because hopefully he's going to succeed with the squad and he's going to succeed with the system, and that we're going to have this team that works well together, that, and we've recruited well, and that and a new manager, for example, can take on a squad and be able to just sort of add it here and there to continue making it a league. I mean, he's so young that he could be here for a decade, for example, if he's successful enough. And that's plenty of time to keep recruiting, keep rebuilding sides, rejuvenate sides, and the likes of that. So hopefully we are going to see that from them. But the main thing is we need to be decisive when it comes to who we're signing, how we're playing, and we need to commit to Amerin's system for at least 2 seasons, for example, give them the best opportunity to really get going with the squad before you then make a decision. And it'll be interesting to know what sort of KPIs are. What is considered successful? So that's a very good question. At this stage, Ruben Amorim's got no expectation, I think, for the season. I think we need to probably go quite far in the Europa League, especially given the fact that it could be our route into top 4. I don't think there's any expectation that he'll get into top 4. I don't know if there's an expectation right now, given the draw, for us to win a trophy. So it'll be interesting to know what his KPIs are. What is Ineos saying to Amorim marks a successful first season? The big thing is, regardless of what happens this season, I don't think he'll get the sack. We have kind of gone with the long-term thing. It's about next season, isn't it? And it's about where can we be next season. And I think the main thing is moving forward. Getting into the top 4 mix will probably be the goal for next season, finishing in that top 4. And the big thing is that Amorim even said, he will only know in about 2-3 years' time whether he's the right person for the job. But United fans will be impatient. We need to see stuff more than that. So the big thing, and he's mentioned, is about winning trophies along the way. And if we can win a couple of trophies and continue progressing, then I think Ruben Amorim will be backed very much long-term by Ineos, because they're somebody that they see the future in him. And hopefully, he pays us back, and hopefully he does continue to go on a really good long run with United, and he can become one of the better managers in the last few years. But he's got to get, first of all, he's got to give him the chance to succeed. He's got to be backed, and back means giving the time, giving the players, giving the opportunities, giving the support during the bad times, giving the room to fail. And that's a big thing. So many managers are not given room to fail because it's such a results-based business, because, places are money and results are money, and not making competitions, not winning trophies. That is hugely costly in a sport which has become so money-driven, that managers are not given the space to fail. And this is the big thing that Ineos have to be brave with. They've got to give Ruben Amorim space to fail. They've got to give him, opportunities where we might come up short. And we might make mistakes. He might select the wrong team. He might make the wrong substitutions. He might make the wrong calls, which could result in the wrong results, and us being knocked out of competitions, us maybe not making it a place or two high in the Premier League. But you've got to give him the space to fail, as long as that failure results in learning experience and results in improvement long term. And that's the big thing. I think Ineos will do. I think they will see the space for failure. But how do you respond to that failure? And as long as we're moving forward, they'll continue to back him through that failure, which is the right way of doing it. So, yeah, we're going to wrap up there. If you have any thoughts, let me know down in the comments below. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe as well. We'll be live once again tomorrow morning, every morning at 9 a.m. at British Standard Time. We will be live, and then we have an upload goes out in the evenings with whatever the latest news story is, or maybe a specific thing we want to talk about in the evenings as well. So we'll see you guys all next time. Please do, as I said, like the video and jump in the comments, subscribe to the channel as well, and I'll see you.